Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Lynn Wagner, and you are listening to Doc's Thoughts. So, I am super excited about today's episode because we have with us a certified sexologist. And we're going to talk a lot about her practice and her background. And I'm really excited to share this with you because it's something that I talk about with all of my patients at their clinic appointments. And it's a really, really big part of health and wellness. And we don't talk about it enough, and people are afraid to talk about it. So, it's really nice when I work individually with my patients and we talk about it, they feel comfortable to talk more about it. And it can be really, really helpful for them when they're going on their health journey. So I met Erica about maybe 2, 3 months ago at a conference that we were at, and we hit it off. We had a great time, and she was so kind to agree to be on my podcast. So we'll get right to it. So Erica is a certified sex and relationship coach and board certified sexologist, and she's in Salt Lake City, Utah. So she was nice enough to jump in from out of state today. She specializes in working with those who are in midlife and beyond, helping them explore, embrace, and express their sexuality with joy, confidence, and pleasure. She sees adult clients of all genders and sexual orientations. Her approach to working with clients is one that is co-creative, holistic, and pleasure-focused. Erica's passion is helping her clients get in touch with their pleasure and their sensuality, vital components to their overall sexual health and wellness. And her tagline is, "Pleasure is my passion." So she believes that pleasure is our birthright, and I do too, that it is genuinely reflected in her desire and commitment in helping others maximize their sexual potential. So that's kind of the bio, to the start of her bio. But I'm going to start with asking her, so, what's your background? How did you get into this practice? What does it look like now? So I'll let you talk.
Oh, great. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Wagner. It's such a pleasure. And, when we first met, I don't know, it just lended itself so easily to start talking about things about sex and sexuality. It was such a comfortable talk. And I think these are the conversations that we need to have with everybody. So
Yes.
thank you for this experience. So I am trained, I come from a marriage and family background in therapy. I was trained as a marriage and family therapist. And then just kind of through the course of time, life happened and I found myself, I was now in a new state and I didn't really want to go back to therapy. So I was kind of like, I came from California to Utah. What do I do now? So I went into life and wellness coaching. So I love helping professions. I've always been in my foot in some type of helping profession, I think, as long as I can remember. But I just wanted to take people who were where they are right now and then bridge the gap to where they wanted to go. And with therapy, it was more dealing with, trauma and dysfunction and processing emotions. And I just didn't feel that was my space anymore. So I really want to help people just achieve the goals that they wanted. So that was sort of my journey. I worked for a big like fitness health center and retreat center. And strangely enough, though, people were asking me about sex. And I always had a sense of comfort in talking about sex, but I just didn't feel like it was in my scope of practice. So took a deep dive and figured out, can I actually do this as a career? And sure enough, I figured out, yeah, I think I can actually do this, but I wanted to get the training and the backing and the professionalism and all the stuff, the knowledge that I needed to. So I went back to school. I got a master's level certification in sexology and sex coaching. And I just feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm in my mid 50s and I feel like this is my third act and I feel like finally I figured out what I want to do and I'm going to do this for the rest of my days.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it shows. It very much shows when someone talks to you. What is a sexologist?
A
How would you
sexologist
define that?
really it's really essentially it's the study of how we think and behave in a sexual experience.
And how did
So
you find a training program? Like, how did that come into your life? How did you find it?
well, I just thought is that it doesn't even exist. And so I was looking at like a lot of sex therapy programs. So I kind of went that route at first. And I thought, no, that doesn't quite fit me. So sex coaching, I actually did a lot of research. And strangely enough, I mean, Sex Coach University is where I ended up. And I know it kind of sounds like I graduated from Sex Coach University, but I will tell
Right.
you, the founder is the mother of sex coaching, Dr. Patty Britton, and she was really the pioneer who started this whole profession. And so I feel so grateful to be was under her tutelage, and she's my mentor. And so just looking at the curriculum, thinking this is very comprehensive, and I wanted both the theoretical and practical knowledge in all of this work. So I jumped in, and I can honestly and very proudly say that I am a Sex Coach U graduate.
I love it. No, that's I was gonna ask you if you had a mentor, if you had someone who kind of
Oh
directed
yeah,
you along the way. So I think that happens for a lot of us.
yeah.
And then where do you practice now? So what is your business like work life look like right now?
So I have a couple of different streams. I have a private practice. So I'm in person. I actually work in a, pelvic floor PT clinic, and it's just a little bit very close to Salt Lake City. So I work a couple days a week in their practice, and it's such a beautiful marriage because pelvic floor. We're actually doing a workshop next week on pleasure in your pelvic floor, because I don't think we realize how much our pelvic floor is tied to all the things that we do in life, and especially sexual function. So
Yeah.
I love working in person with people, but then I also work for Maven Clinic, which is a women's healthcare company. So I do telehealth with that. And then finally, I work with a company called Caitlin V, and I work a lot with older men and their wives. So I kind of have a full spectrum of clients with whom I work, and I love every single one of them.
Yeah, and I was gonna just talk. A lot of people don't know what pelvic floor therapy is. But basically, I refer my patients out to it all the time because the pelvic floor is, and you can fill me in on this if you want to, but it's the musculature and the components of your pelvic floor that can be tight or too loose even, and can then affect not just sexual function, but can cause chronic pain. It can cause breathing
Incontinence,
problems,
right? Issues
incontinence.
with the bowels. Yeah, I mean
Yeah, so it's really important.
it's huge, right?
And
Well,
and I go ahead.
go ahead. No, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think a lot of our pelvic floor dysfunction comes from our stress and constantly being in fight or flight mode, because it's like, if you think about when you're scared, you're in that crouched tight position. And I see that all the time where people can't relax. And
Yeah.
that plays out in the bedroom too, or wherever they,
Oh, 100%.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that, you hear, oh, just do Kegels and everything will be great, right?
Right.
Well,
No.
well, and from my experience in working with these physical therapists, the realization is that actually we're not too loose down there. We're actually tight. We're like, we have too much, is it hypertonic? So
Yes.
we're too tight. And so that actually plays into so many different things, with erections, with orgasm,
Yes.
all of those things. So actually, it's almost the opposite. So if you're super tight to begin with, how can you have any contraction at all?
Right. Right.
Right? So, but it's just mind blowing. I have a really good friend who's an ER nurse, and she's having some incontinence issues, and she was going right to the surgery route. And I said, hold on, why don't you talk to a pelvic floor PT? And she goes, what's that? She had no idea. So I think part of my message is not even just to like talk about what I do, but the beautiful and really crucial work that pelvic floor physical therapists do too.
But I would also say that some people go to physical therapy for pelvic floor therapy and they don't have someone who's also addressing like the psychosocial part of it.
Sure.
Which is, I feel like that's where you have such a beautiful marriage with them, because you can fix the pelvic floor, but then if there's also a person who has a lot of trauma or a lot of anxiety or they're in a high cortisol state, that's going to make it impossible to relax the pelvic floor. So I think what you're doing is amazing.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you for that too, because I feel like I kind of work on a very holistic perspective. So I'm looking at the mind, I'm looking at emotions, I'm looking at body and behavior, also their energy and their spirit. So I kind of assess like kind of what their needs are, and if we're ruling out any kind of medical, any physical conditions, then usually what happens next is working on the mental side of things, and a lot of it is we're always in our heads, right? And when it comes to sex, that's the last place we want to be. We need
Right,
to get
right,
out of our heads.
right. Which is so hard.
Yes,
So
yeah.
I know I wanted to talk. I'm gonna talk later about some more of like the medical part of sexuality and the physiology and the anatomy and why people might have a low libido, et cetera, et cetera. But I would love to hear more about your take on what is sexuality. I know you wanted to discuss pleasure in that context as well, so I'll let you run with that a little bit.
Oh yeah. Well, I think we're all sexual beings, whether we want to admit it or not. I mean, even at a young, very, very, very young age, we are sexual beings, and our bodies are the first vehicle to really, figure out our own pleasure. And I think that's a big part of it. I'm a big fan of Emily Nagoski, and she's written two amazing books, one of which is Come As You Are, and the second, the newest book she has out, it's called Come Together, and it's about relationships and how pleasure. She says pleasure is the measure. So if we can think of our however we define sex, because I think that can be different for a lot of people, but think about it from a pleasure perspective. Like, how am I feeling in that sexual experience? And I think the main thing is to be able to say, I need to feel pleasure. I want pleasure, and I want to give that to my partner or partners. Excuse me. Um, but the only way we're going to be able to do that is to really explore that for ourselves. And it
Mhm.
means a lot of different, it's touching, it's self pleasure, but it's also non-sexual pleasure. It's figuring out what you love that gets you relaxed, that gets you energized, and really tuning in, whether you need to take a walk in nature and you get those, so you're talking about all the senses, right? So touch, taste, smell, sound, sight, and how can we incorporate that into a sexual experience?
Well, and I have to add in right now, you are probably triggering the shit out of people right now.
Okay, let's talk
And
about that.
this is what I want to talk about because even me, like raised as I was Catholic upbringing, Midwest girl, um, it even triggers me a little bit, but I'm obviously mature enough that I can recognize it and go past it. But like, I think there's a lot of people that think of sexuality and pleasure as a sin. And a lot of people think about sexuality and pleasure as, maybe that's too much gratification and we're chasing dopamine and that's not good either. So how would you wrap that up in a nice little box for me?
Oh boy. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah.
You didn't have to. But I mean, that's what people are. It's like such a natural. People really struggle with it.
Absolutely. And I live in Salt Lake City. I live in Utah.
I
So
know.
we have a predominant culture here
Yes.
that can be very challenging to work with sometimes. I think what it comes down to, obviously, it's like, our upbringing, our, religious background, society or culture, all of that plays a part into our own sexuality. But, if we get these messages, right? External messages, whether it's a caregiver, you're 3 years old and you're in the you're in the bath and you're playing with your genitals. Don't do that. Stop.
Right.
That's
Right.
naughty. Or, okay, so that sends a negative message, right? Or some loving person saying, that's great, baby, but let's keep that in, you can do that in the bath, but but be able to not shame them. And I think
Right.
that's the hard thing, is we get shamed so early in life, and then
So
every
early.
other experience we have that reinforces that, it's like another nail in the coffin, right? So
Yeah.
then we build the story in our heads that sex should be shameful, I should feel guilty, whatever pleasures I have are weird or abhorrent or not normal. And I think so many people they just want to feel normal.
Right. No, and
And
I think
what is normal, right?
yeah, and I think it plays out into other areas of your life as well because like pleasure, like you said, it's not just sexuality. It's eating a really good meal. It's
Yeah.
looking at a beautiful view. It's
It's
feeling the
being
breeze,
present,
being
right? And
present,
I
smelling
think
the
that's the other
perfume.
thing. You're being present in the moment is so crucial to anything we do. Mindfulness. I do a lot of mindfulness work with my clients, and it's basically connecting to your body, getting out of your head, being in the present moment, not thinking about what happened 10 minutes ago or 10 years ago or what's going to happen from right now forward, right? And it's hard. It's hard. A lot of people, they struggle with that. And we have that monkey mind that just keeps going and going and going. And if you have any type of mindfulness practice, or even want to try, like, start with 1 minute, and you're going to notice you're probably going to screw up, and that's okay. But it's also the awareness of you noticing that you're screwing up is the start for change, right? And
Yeah.
anything we do that we need to change, it is unknown, it's scary, we don't like it, but we have to keep doing the work. We have to keep moving forward in order to make those changes to better ourselves.
And I don't think people realize how much that not being mindful and being in a chronic state of stress or fight or flight affects their sexuality. They just
Oh,
think they just
yeah.
think, "Oh, I'm getting old. It's normal that my libido is going to go down." And they don't realize that it can be natural for it to stay high for a long time.
Well,
Um,
I have a great example. So I have a couple clients from Florida. So I do 75% of my business is virtual, which I love because I have international clients. I have clients all over the world, all over the state. It's amazing. Um, they are 83 and 88. He's 83. She just turned 88.
that's
They've
awesome.
been working with me for almost 6 months now, and he came to me because he wanted to enhance their pleasure in the bedroom. Okay, this is octogenarians
Right.
wanting to enhance their pleasure in the bedroom. They are like my poster children for what good sex can be throughout the lifespan. And I asked for a testimonial. He wrote a 3-page letter, the most glowing. It made me cry, and oh my goodness, it was so thoughtful. But I realized the impact that them talking with me and co-creating this new relationship, this new sexual relationship together, was so incredibly powerful for them. It was powerful. I learned so much for them. It's
That is
amazing.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. So what would you say? I think one of the questions we had talked about beforehand is talking about what's considered normal and how to strive for optimal. That was one you put in.
So I think optimal is where we need to be. I think people, when they think of normal, they're looking externally out to everyone else. They're comparing themselves to everyone else out there. Oh, my girlfriend said that, she and her husband have sex every day during the week, or twice a day, or whatever that is. And
Right.
we're not doing that. So that means that we're not normal, that
Right.
we're not okay. And that's a lot of the work that I do, is just really to let people know what's normal, what works for you, what's optimal for you as an individual, as a couple. And really, the only way to figure that out is, are you having conversations about it? Like,
Mhm.
are the sex that you're having, is it worth having? Do you like the sex that you're currently having? If so, awesome. How do you want to enhance that? And that's wonderful. But if not, then what do you need to change? And for a lot of women, they endure. So I'm sure you see this a lot. Pain with sex is so prevalent.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of women, again, I think it's also a cultural, it's religious, it's societal. We endure because we don't want them to reject us. We don't want to feel unloved. So we do a lot of things that don't serve us and our own pleasure because we're meeting the needs of somebody else.
Right. So what would you tell someone who's enduring? So what do you say to a woman
Stop
who
that shit right now. Like, right now.
Right. I mean,
I mean, I'm sorry, but yeah, very bluntly, and like, how are you taking care of yourself? And I'm not saying masturbation at all, but
right.
what works for you in the relationship? What is that bringing to you so that's why I keep going back to pleasure. If it doesn't feel pleasurable, why are you doing it?
Right. And I would add in there that there are medical reasons why it might not feel pleasurable that also need to be looked at.
Absolutely.
So it could be pelvic floor.
Yep.
It could be that you've lost your hormones, so you have no
Yep.
estrogen bathing your vagina in estrogen.
Yep.
So you need some estrogen down there. Back pain, people with
Yep.
chronic back pain. So sometimes it's like, okay, let's look into why you're having this discomfort and fix that.
Totally. And I think that's the important thing, is really pinpointing, even with the pain itself, at what part of, is it insertion? Is it deep penetration? Like,
Right. Right.
where, because those are different issues to
Totally
address.
different. Right.
So, but again, it's having a conversation. It's being brave and vulnerable to say explicitly what's going on.
Right. How do you feel, or what do you say to a woman who withholds or who's just has no interest and just is like, I'm just not going to do this? You probably
I
don't
mean,
get a
it's,
lot of people like that because they come to you
yeah.
for advice, but
Well,
I see that a lot.
I have two camps, because I think part of it's like, that's her prerogative. If she doesn't want sex, she's not required to have sex.
Right.
End of story. I get so many people who are, we usually have, one is, mismatched, one is a higher libido than the other, right? But it doesn't mean that because this person's here, he or she, and I say he or she because I have clients who are, not, maybe more atypical, like maybe the male has less libido, which is other
Right.
issues, right? That they have to work on hormones and whatever else. But
Right.
it doesn't mean that they have to come up here, because that's probably not going to work for them very
Right.
well,
Right.
right? So, but again, it's communication. It's figuring out, well, again, is the sex that they're having worth having? Because I think for a lot of people, the sex isn't good. Why do I want to keep doing this? But they don't ask their partner for what they really need, because they're afraid. They're afraid of their reaction or the response, or, something else. And
Right.
so it just keeps perpetuating, because again, so much of sex is about communication. So, the relationship aspect of what I do with sex and relationships, it's all tied. And if we can't communicate outside the bedroom, we sure as hell can't do it in the bedroom.
No. And so how do you deal with people? Either there's two camps here. The people where you can tell the relationship is very dysfunctional. So it's not the sex isn't the problem, it's the actual relationship. or the patients who or clients who have significant trauma or emotional things, because you have this background in mental health. So I'm sure you bring a lot of that to the table when you work with people.
Absolutely. Well, and to be clear too, like I know with me, like if I have a client who comes in and they are dealing with a lot of, trauma, a lot of processing of emotions where it's getting in the way of the work that we could do together, I will refer someone out because
Okay.
I feel like that's not in my scope of practice.
Right.
And we have wonderful sex therapists who can pinpoint those issues and really work deeply with that. Where I would be someone who, for the most part, we all have trauma in some way, right?
Right.
But if it's trauma that is keeping them stuck, that they can't get out of it, then that would be someone that they would, a therapist would work lovely for them. But for me, I'm working with someone where here you are right now. Okay. You're relatively well, relatively healthy, mind, body, and soul, all of that. So what are your stated goals? Like what do you want to get out of this? And where can we find the bridge to be able to get over that so that you can achieve the desired goals that you want?
Right. Have you might not have an answer for this, but have you had any experience referring patients out for things like ketamine therapy or brain spotting or some of that kind of subconscious
Some
type?
EMDR work,
Yeah.
for sure, but with ketamine and brain spotting, not yet.
Okay.
But again, I know I know in the state of Utah, we have a lot of ketamine centers that are coming up, and a lot of functional medicine. I think we do really well with some of the healthcare that we have, especially when it comes to mental health. We can always do better, obviously, but it's nice to have some resources to be able to send to people locally, but also knowing you too, it's wonderful to have another resource, right? Because
Right.
the beauty is that, I have someone who might be in South Dakota that, I know that they need more help. Guess who I can refer them to,
Right.
and
Right.
then and that's the beauty of think of what we can do here. I'm not shackled by licensure. So I have certifications, but I'm not licensed as a therapist. It allows me to have more freedom and be able to work with more people in other places.
Right. No, definitely. So when I was going to ask you about this one. Oh, you had a section here talking about orgasm. So we want to have the orgasm conversation.
Oh
Are you ready
man.
for that
Well,
one?
sure. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
You have a
Absolutely.
you have a pretty you've got multiple points about that one. So I would say let's talk about what it is, how it's different between a male and a female, and then anything else you want to talk about related to orgasms.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, like I knew very early on, like I didn't know what it was. I knew just that it felt really good. So I want to keep doing it. Right. So like going back to having like if something, because either it's, hormonal stress, trauma, there are so many issues why we're not having orgasms, right? Or we are not, our partners aren't taking the time to figure out what we need, but we as our own individuals need to take the time to figure out how we can do that for ourselves.
Well,
And I think that's scary for a lot of people.
because I don't think people know like how much longer it takes a woman to reach a state of arousal. Like a man,
It's
it's like let's go. But
what
I
is
mean,
it, 20 it could be 20 to 40 minutes and maybe
right,
even longer for some women.
right,
And if women are in their heads for any reason and they're not embodied, it's probably not going to happen either. And again,
right.
this is different, when you're younger, it's usually a little bit easier, for various reasons. We have better hormonal systems when we're younger. And
Hormones.
but as we age and things happen in our lives, we lose estrogen, we have atrophy. There's so many different things that can contribute. For example, and I'll be very candid here, I've always been multi-orgasmic. It's just something I've been gifted, having that experience.
Right.
I recently, within the last couple of years, went on a very low dose of a blood pressure medication for a familial heart thing that I have in my family, and I was having trouble with orgasm. And I was
So
pissed
common.
off, to be
Yes.
honest. I was
Yeah. So
pissed.
common.
Come to find out, this particular drug works on our hormones, but also can mute orgasm.
Yes.
I was blown away by that, number one. So I did some research. I'm still on it, but I'm shifting my own sense of like how to pleasure myself, and then also to express to my partner, yeah, you might need to do this a little longer. Or maybe it's, how many women can actually orgasm with penetration?
Right.
Very
Not
few,
right.
very few, very few. I mean, there are those unicorns out there, of course, like anything else, but for most of us women, we need external, maybe external and internal. Like,
Yes.
but we also need we need to feel safe. We need to feel trusty. We need to feel relaxed, right? If we're in our parasympathetic versus our sympathetic nervous systems, right? If we're up here, fight or flight, the blood can't, we're ready to run, we're ready to fight, we're ready
Right.
to, whatever. And that, the blood isn't going to get down to the genitals to do what it needs to do in that
Right.
moment. So
Yeah, because
that's where the mindfulness comes in, right? That's where the embodiment, and I do a lot of practices with my clients to get them in their bodies, get them out of their heads so they're relaxed enough that they can even start to feel like maybe this can happen for me.
yeah, and I think just for my audience, I think, from a medical standpoint, an orgasm is engorgement with blood of your erectile tissue. So a woman has a clitoris and a male has a penis. You know, that we know, right? But if you think about it,
As you can see right behind me, I and I have a wonderful friend who's actually crocheted these clitoris in this honey pot. He's actually crocheted them for
I
me.
love this so much. So you think about it, it makes sense. If you are in fight or flight, which is that state of in your nervous system where you're like in an emergency, and like
Yep.
Americans are in it all of the time, the
Yep.
blood gets redirected to your brain and your muscles and your heart so that you can take care of yourself during this emergency.
Yep.
It gets shunted away
Shunted.
from your reproductive organs and your gut. So it's why people have digestive issues who are always stressed. It's why people have trouble orgasming when they're always stressed, why they have a low libido. So it goes on and on. So that makes a ton of sense, obviously. And then
Yeah.
also the point about the medication, people don't realize how much medication can affect blood flow down there, how it can affect your hormones, like you said, with the blood pressure medication, or in the case of antidepressants, you
Yeah.
know,
SSRIs, right?
SSRIs,
Yeah. Yep.
like literally
Mm-hmm.
women lose their ability to orgasm. And
Yep.
also I want to say there's so many women out there who just have a sexual life with their partner and they have never told their partner that they are not orgasming. It's like get a
Yeah,
freaking vibrator.
and that's huge, right? I mean, and that's another question I think that's so important to talk about too, is that people have sex, but they're not talking about it with their partners. The most
Right,
intimate, they're doing the most intimate things with somebody, and yet they're not having those conversations.
right. And I
So
think
that's a lot of my work with, especially with couples, is have them to start talking to each other about their needs, about their desires, about their wants and their turn-ons. And and I don't know why that we put so much shame or fear into that, right? I think again it's about, well, if I tell him, then he's going to feel like he didn't perform this whole time, that like he's not a good lover, and then he's going to feel bad, or he's going to feel or I'm going to feel rejected. I mean, we put all of this in our heads. Again, we're back in our heads, right? And then when that happens, we're not able to really feel the full embodiment and pleasure that we can do if we let that shit go.
right, right.
But it's not easy. It's not
No,
easy.
no, it's not at all. Um, One thing you said you had something like responsive versus spontaneous desire, and then pleasure versus performance. Talk more about that.
Yeah. So again, I'm referring to Emily Nagoski because her book, Come As You Are, I think every single person on the planet, male, female, non-binary, every single person needs to read this book because it sets the tone. This is scientific based evidence that, okay, when we're younger and we're in this new hot and heavy relationship, we're going to get excited just like that, right? And for men, okay, men do have a different response system than what we do as women for the most part,
Yeah,
not all, but for the most part, yes. And we're ready to go. We're horny for them, right? We desire them, and like it's so hot and heavy, and then that's how we expect it to be every time.
right,
And but what happens when, okay, let's say that now I feel bad because I don't feel desirable. But if he were to, in a heterosexual couple, if he were just to, I mean, okay, let's be honest, take out the garbage, do some laundry, maybe spend a little bit of time talking with me and rubbing my shoulders, it's getting me in a mood. Maybe I don't even wanted to have sex to begin with, but what my body is starting to feel as time goes, I'm responding to that sensation versus just like I'm hot and horny right now. So
yes,
if we can know this about our own bodies, that we don't have to be ready to go for sex I mean, sometimes we are, right? And there's no rhyme or reason that, one day we're gonna do it in 2 seconds and be so excited about it. well, why can't we replicate that the next time, right? And the next time is like, this is not working for me, but I but we can ease into that, and then our bodies can actually respond to the stimuli, and then we can work into that pleasure. So I think us just knowing about, I mean, most women are probably going to be more responsive than spontaneous, but we have this vision in our culture. I mean, look at everything on the media, on TV and movies. It's hot, heavy, instant all the time. And so I think it's a huge disservice to most of us because that's not what happens in real life.
No, not
And
at
then
all.
people get pissed off because, or the partner says, well, why aren't you horny for me? Why aren't you ready for me? Why aren't you wet? Why aren't you whatever? I'm like, and that, so every time that happens to somebody, how do you think, do they want to have sex with that person?
Right.
I'm going to say it's going to be a little less likely, but if they were more open to, okay, let's have a half an hour massage first. Let's put on some music. Let's light a candle, maybe have a glass of wine or not, or have a beautiful dinner. Like all of those things, going back to the sensuality of our own bodies and the connection with that other person, that can get us into a state where then we are responsive enough that then we really do want to have sex, and
Right.
our bodies respond to that accordingly.
And the relaxation. Like
And relaxation.
relaxation.
Yes. Yes. Well,
What about
even for
pleasure? Go
pleasure
ahead.
versus pleasure versus performance. So, and most of the work I do with men, I mean, that is that they perform, right? That is their job. That's what's been ingrained for ever. That's the script, right? That's what you see everywhere. That's probably what you've learned from male, caregivers, and responses from female partners too, which is can be a little challenging, right? So for a lot of the men that I work with, if they have erection, whether it's premature ejaculation, ED, if there's nothing going on physically, disease, injuries, that sort of thing, it's up here. How do you start taking away the aspect of I need to perform, and focus on what does he need for pleasure? And maybe the penis isn't going to be rock hard at the drop of a hat, but guess what? And again, I think that's both men and women, because women are culprits in that too. Oh, you're not hard for me. Are you not attracted to me?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's a double, it's a total double-edged sword. But again, it's talking about, yes, I am. I just need a little bit more time to get hard for you. But will you please stay with me? Let's kiss. Let's make out. Let's do some of these other things that feel good in our bodies, so then we can be ready for intercourse. And again, sex is not just intercourse. There's a lot of things we can be doing that is not intercourse. And I
Not
think that's
penetration.
also some people just don't, it's like, what's on the menu? There's a lot more on the menu than just this one thing. So
Well,
how can you explore that?
and that brings me to the topic about toys and lubrication. And I want to start this by saying, when I first started my private practice, I told all of my girlfriends that I was going to have a lobby with a wall of vibrators on the wall, because
Yeah.
my experience in life with vibrators was, I remember in medical school, someone in my class was talking about her vibrator, and I thought she was the devil. I was like, she's terrible. She is sinning. I was like, this, I do not want to associate with this person. And then fast forward, I don't need to share personal details, but I got used to them, and now I accept them, and I tell my patients to get them if they're having problems achieving orgasm.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. How often do you see
Yeah.
clients using toys and vibrators and things like that?
Absolutely. Well, and again, going back to, even I think it's very appropriate to introduce those into the bedroom with a couple. Because
Yes.
and I have couples who will use it during play. Maybe she's using one while there's penetration, because then she's kind of getting the best of both worlds,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's not cheating. It's not, oh my gosh, she doesn't want me because I'm not enough for her. you know I wish people would just stop thinking about all of those negatives and really think about, how are you co-creating your own relationship? What do you both need to come together and really make this as great as possible? And there are so many toys that can do that with couples, but let alone even individuals. So for some clients, I might say, okay, she's not interested. That doesn't mean that you can't self pleasure, or vice versa. But maybe you talk about it and say, hey, honey, I'm putting a sock on the door and I'll see you in a half an hour. Because I think what that allows people to do is, when they can figure out their own pleasure and really understand what that is for their bodies, then when they come together and have really good conversations with their partners, how much better the sex can be when they're talking about it, when they're experimenting and exploring with each other. I mean, that to me just opens so many doors.
Well, and I think, a lot of women, when I bring up the using devices in the bedroom, they're just like, oh my gosh, he's going to feel so hurt. He's going to think he's
Inadequate.
not good enough. And then always in their follow-up appointments, they're like, oh my gosh, he loved it so much. This has changed our life. I mean, it's one of those things where people just have to get over the stigma of it.
Well, and I think, and so what's the sexy, what's the sexiest thing for me is having someone who's turned on,
Yes,
right? So like when you know your partner is turned on, how amazing is that?
right,
And then, the more pleasure that you can derive from that, I mean, as individuals and as couples together, man, oh man, I mean, that's the sexiest thing ever, I think.
right. I totally agree. And then lubrication wise, so I talk about lube all the time with my female patients, and I put them all on estriol vaginal inserts or cream once they go through menopause, because I tell them, I'm like, hey, we all take care of our skin. We get facials and we do Botox and we do lotions and creams and potions, but like no one is nurturing the vagina anymore.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, you have to
And the
treat,
vulva and the vulva
yes,
too, right?
yes,
Yeah.
both. You have to
Yeah.
treat them like you treat your entire body as you're aging, because obviously at a certain age, things start to atrophy, get thin, dry, tight. And so what is your take on that? And what do you tell your clients?
Well, I don't know if have you heard of if there's another great book called The New Menopause by Dr. Mary Claire Haver.
Okay.
Revolutionary. It's like, I think it's busting out. People are finally starting to talk about their menopause journeys and the support that, that they're getting and HRT and all that stuff. But listening to her a lot, I realized that, vaginal moisturizers are very important for women over, whether it's perimenopause or other conditions that they have. So I think vaginal moisturizers are huge, but also just lubrication in general. So I used to work for Uberlube, so I'm gonna.
Oh,
Here's my
that's
little.
great.
Here's my little book. My bookend is an Uberlube
Yes.
oil, which is a silicone lubricant, which is my favorite. And so, in talking about lubrications, I mean, there is a lot of lubes out there, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to find what works for you, but be it, pay attention to the ingredients. I mean, if like there are certain brands that have massive amount of chemicals, and do we
Mhm.
really want to put that in our vaginas? I
No.
mean, so to be really thoughtful about what we're putting in there, right? And there's water based, there's hybrids. So a hybrid is a water/silicone base, and there's silicone. There's also, people talk about coconut oil. um, I think you have to figure out what works for your body. Some people are allergic to aloe. They're allergic to coconut oil, and they may
Mhm.
not know that
Right, I've seen that.
until they've experienced it, right? So, and a lot of irritation can come from certain things that we're putting in our bodies that we're not even realizing. So, I mean, I love silicone lube and I love Uber lube because it feels so good on the skin. It can be external and internal without having to wash anything off. Like if you were doing massage oil, you don't want massage oil in the vagina. That is not good for all the lovely bacteria that we want to keep in the vagina, right?
Right, right.
But, also just a matter of knowing that the myth of lube, right? Oh, you have to be an old dried up hag before you start lube. When my daughter was 18, I bought her first vibrator. Well, she chose. And I said, and you're also using this lubrication because as a young person, starting this journey and knowing that it's not like a crutch to use lube, it is an enhancement for every single sexual experience that you can have.
Mhm.
100%.
I love that. I love that.
And
So
I would say one caveat, if you're using condoms, silicone, so every, like with hybrids and water based lubes, any kind of condoms are great, but if you are using a silicone lube, you do not want to use a polyurethane condom because that will deteriorate. Other condoms are great, latex and polyisoprene are great, but polyurethane, you just want to stay away with that if you're using silicone.
very good to know. And that actually, I know you have a client coming up soon, so I'm gonna wrap this up shortly. But you mentioned your daughter, 18-year-old, and I know that most of your clients are more the middle age and
Mm-hmm.
older. But what would you say to the young people if they've made it this far in the episode about their sexuality? Because it starts, like you said, 3 years old. Like that's when it
Yeah.
starts. And I find with
Um,
my patients that the earlier I get them in my clinic, the easier it is for them to transform and be well and healthy. And I
Yeah.
feel like it would be the same with sexuality.
Well, and thank you, because I think that's a great point. Know your body. Know your body. Do not be afraid to tell somebody no. Do not be afraid to say, this hurts, this is uncomfortable. And be brave to say, this is what I like.
Yes.
This is what turns me on. This is what feels good. I think if, so again, I think it's all about communication and being able to really not only communicate for themselves and their own bodies and to really know what that feels like, but how beautiful it is to have a young person like know what their pleasure is, that they're not learning it when they're 30,
Right.
50, 80.
Right.
And just get rid of the stigma of there's no shame about loving our bodies. There's no shame about us wanting, desiring, and having pleasure, because again, it's our birthright. And if we're doing it every day and we can't work and we don't have a job because all we're doing is pleasuring ourselves, that's a different story. And I think that's what people kind of assume, that, well, if I like pleasure, then this is guilty and I shouldn't be doing it. I think it's the opposite. The more we do that, the more that we find pleasure in everyday life and everything we do with our
Yes.
families, in our work life. And I think that's the ripple effect that just comes out. If we feel good within ourselves, then I just think that everything and everyone else is better for it.
I love it. I love it. That was a perfect ending. So I want to share more about where people can find you. So first, I want to share that she has a book. It's
I
called
do.
Feel Sexy Again, The Ultimate Guide to Reclaiming Your Sexual Confidence. That came out in 2021. And you said you wrote this book for those who want to take a backseat in their own lives, or no, you wrote it for those who often take a backseat in their own lives, caring for everyone else and leaving little for themselves. So in it, you stress the importance of taking ownership of your own pleasure, developing the mindset to create the change we desire, and embarking on a journey to reignite and reclaim the sexual, sensual creature who lies within each of us. Waiting to
Yay!
acknowledge the self. I love that. It's amazing. So I would 100% get her book, and I'll put the links for all these things and information in the copy below. But also, I'm going to also ask you to share those. You mentioned 2 other books, so I'll ask you to share those with me, and I'll put those down there too. And then she has a website, so www.sexcoachslc.com. I'll put that in there. She's on Instagram. She's on LinkedIn. She has an email. I don't know if you want me to put that on the
Sure. Yeah,
actual.
no, people, I'm happy for people to reach out and email
Great.
me. And I also have my Acuity calendar. I offer a free discovery call. So I think there is a link that it's the
On your
Acuity
website.
code with it. Uh, let's see, I think if you have it, but I think it's sexcoachslc.as.me/Lynn Wagner MD. So if people do click on that, it'll go directly to my calendar, and that they can just sign up for a free session
Okay, that's amazing.
right there. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have you send that to me again, and I'll put it on there.
Okay.
But with that being said, I know this episode is very different from ones I've done in the past, just because I talk more about integrative medicine and health and wellness. But like I said, this is like a huge part of a patient's intake is talking about their sexuality, and it's a huge part of their health and wellness. And so, my goal was to take the stigma away from it, be open about it, make people more comfortable talking about it. And I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did, because I had a lot of good belly laughs throughout. And I really look forward to doing it again with you, because I know we have more topics we want to talk about. So
Absolutely. And I have to say thank you so much. We need so many more of you in the world,
thank
because um, the healthcare providers, it's so little knowledge about sex and sexuality. And so I think people feel almost more lost sometimes when they go in for appointments. So having a doctor like you who can speak to all of that, who isn't going to shame them, who's going to be open and compassionate and have those conversations, you are a gift to your
you.
patients.
Thank you so much. Well, we will talk. Have fun with your next client.
Thank you. Such appreciated. Take care. Bye
Bye.
bye.